In the 1st century CE, in the city of Alexandria, a crowd gathered in front of a sealed temple. No ropes, no workers, no visible mechanism, just stone, metal, silence. A priest stepped forward. He lit a fire, and the doors began to move, slowly, heavily, by themselves. That should not exist, because nothing touched them, no human force, no visible system, no explanation anyone in that crowd could see. Only heat and motion, and in that moment, the first contradiction enters the record. Because if this event is real, then automation existed nearly 2,000 years before we say it began. Now stop, because that idea alone breaks the timeline. The archive preserves fragments of this scene. Texts, diagrams, descriptions attributed to an engineer named Heron of Alexandria. Not myth, not rumor, documentation. Verified evidence shows that Heron described mechanisms in which heat could generate pressure, move liquids, and activate systems of weights and pulleys, resulting in automatic motion. But here's where it shifts. Because this wasn't hidden, it was performed, in public, in front of witnesses, and that changes the nature of the machine. This wasn't just engineering, it was experience. That's the first AHA moment, because the machine wasn't built to replace humans. It was built to convince them. Under the temple floor, unseen by the crowd, the system begins to reveal itself. A sealed chamber, a tube, a vessel partially filled with liquid. When the fire above heats the air inside the chamber, pressure builds. The air expands. It forces liquid through a connected tube into a suspended container. The container grows heavier. It descends. Ropes tighten. Pulleys turn. And the doors open. No magic. No divine intervention. Just physics. But that's exactly what makes it unsettling. Because the effect was designed to look like something else. And just like that, the first open loop closes. The miracle was engineered. But then the pattern begins. Because this is not the only object that behaves like controlled illusion. In Roman territory, sometime between the 4th and 5th century CE, a glass vessel appears that refuses to behave like glass. The Lycurgus cup. At first glance, it looks ordinary, greenish, opaque, unremarkable. But then the light changes, and the object transforms from green to red. Not gradually, not subtly, instantly. That shouldn't happen, because materials don't behave like that, at least, not without explanation. And now the second contradiction emerges. Verified evidence shows that the Lycurgus cup contains microscopic particles of gold and silver embedded within the glass, producing a dichroic effect that changes color depending on the direction of light. It is precise, intentional, controlled. But here's the problem. This effect depends on particle sizes so small. They approach the nanoscale, and yet, this object was created over 1,500 years ago. Because this is no longer accidental craftsmanship. This is material engineering. See, a legend says such cups could detect poison, shifting color in the presence of dangerous substances. There is no strong evidence for that claim. But the legend matters, because it reveals how people experienced the object. Not as glass, but as something alive, responsive, unstable. And again, the pattern intensifies. A system that creates movement from heat. A material that transforms under light. Both are real. Both are engineered. Both feel like something more than they are. So we step back. We look at the map. Alexandria, Rome. Different contexts, different purposes, and yet the same underlying principle emerges. Control. Control of motion, control of perception, control of reality, as experienced by the observer. Patterns feel intentional, but patterns aren't proof. Still, the pattern doesn't stop there. Because in the same intellectual world that produced automated temples, another device appears. Smaller, quieter, almost dismissed. A sphere, suspended above a vessel of boiling water. Two bent tubes extend from its surface. When heated, it begins to spin, slowly at first, then faster, then violently, the Aeolipile. And now the third contradiction arrives. Because this is not just motion, this is power. A. Verified evidence shows that the Aeolipile operates on the principle of reaction thrust. Steam escaping through angled nozzles produces rotational force. In modern terms, it is a primitive steam turbine. And now the question becomes unavoidable. If they had this, why didn't they use it? Why wasn't it connected to mills? To machines? To transport? Why does it appear and then stop? That's the third open loop. Because technically, the pieces exist. Pressure systems, mechanical transfer, rotational motion, the ingredients of a revolution, and yet, no revolution follows. Now the contradiction becomes systemic. Because this is no longer about objects. This is about absence. Why does knowledge appear without continuity? Why do breakthroughs emerge without transformation? What stopped the transition from spectacle to system? What held these machines inside temples and demonstrations instead of factories? And how many other inventions never left the workshop at all? Now the science becomes unavoidable. A. Verified evidence shows that all three systems rely on known physical principles. Heron's temple doors use thermodynamics and fluid pressure. The Lycurgus cup uses nanoscale particle light interaction. The Aeolipile converts thermal energy into motion. Nothing supernatural, nothing impossible. But that's exactly what makes it disturbing. Because the understanding was there, the execution was there, the proof was there. So what was missing? Incentive, structure, need. And this is where the modern echo begins. C. A legend says ancient civilizations stood on the edge of an industrial revolution and somehow lost it. D. One hypothesis suggests technological progress depends less on invention and more on context. Economics, labor systems, material limitations. If a society does not need a machine, it does not scale it. And the record supports restraint over speculation. There is no evidence of a hidden industrial age. Found no lost network of steam-powered systems, and no erased technological empire. Instead, what we see is something more precise. Moments, not systems, breakthroughs, not revolutions, and disappearance. So here is the final verdict. What we know: ancient engineers created systems capable of automation, material manipulation, and energy conversion far earlier than expected. What remains plausible: these inventions existed within isolated contexts, demonstrations, rituals, elite knowledge systems, rather than widespread industrial applications. What is likely myth? That a full technological revolution was achieved and then erased. So why do these machines still feel impossible? Because they reveal something uncomfortable. Innovation is not enough. Invention is not enough. Even understanding is not enough. Without the right conditions, progress stops. History doesn't move forward. It pauses. It fragments. It forgets. Not hidden. Not forbidden. Not destroyed. Just never continued. And that may be the most unsettling truth of all. Because if entire revolutions can fail to begin, how many are we standing on right now, without realizing it? And more importantly, how many signals are we ignoring, simply because they don't fit the timeline we expect?